How many of you feel that you're more socially anxious than ever? It may feel strange to go out to a party, a networking event, a friend's birthday, after we've all been stuck indoors and mainly isolated for the last 18 months. If you're feeling that way, you're not alone. I know that even for me, I'm used to being on stages and at events and meeting new people all the time. I'm having to practice and stretch that muscle once again because I just haven't used it for such a long time. In this video, I'm going to share with you the steps you can take to switch from small talk to big or deep talk. You may think that it's easier to do small talk, but actually small talk makes us feel less connected, it makes us feel more distance, and it makes us feel like we have less support and community in our lives. Small talk limits us from deep, meaningful relationships, not just with others, but with ourselves as well. How often do you go to an event, in real life or virtually, and have the same conversation again and again and again? The challenge with this is you stop learning, you stop listening, and you come back home feeling dissatisfied because we're all looking for that human connection. And human connection is created through vulnerable and empathetic conversation. Today I'm going to share with you how you can create that even if you're meeting someone for the first time ever. The first step is to cut the one-word answers. Now, if you think about this for a second, there are 5 words we use more than any other when someone asks us a small talk question. They are good, bad, okay, fine, How's your day going? Okay. How's your week been? Good. How's this year been for you? Bad, right? Like, we have such a limited vocabulary when it comes to sharing how we feel, what we're thinking about, and how we're doing. Now, that not only limits the other person in being connected to us and feeling connected to us, it limits us because we're not diagnosing and understanding how we feel ourselves. We have less data and insight on what we're going through, what we're experiencing, and what we need. One of my favorite studies is something I call the emotional vocabulary, and this was conducted by Harvard, and they call it the emotions list. What this list shows is that for every basic word we use, there is a far deeper list of words that could properly articulate how we're feeling and what we're going through. So when you say you're having a bad day, do you mean you're hurt? Are you upset? Are you disappointed? Are you feeling tired? What do you really mean? And the more deeply you articulate to yourself and to others, the more you're able to take action to make yourself feel better. This also applies to asking questions. When you ask someone a question, it's natural to say, hey, how's it going? I do this all the time. But it's important to follow that up with something else. And in this video, I'm going to share with you some really great questions to ask. The second step is to add insight on what you're reading, learning, hearing, or watching to the conversation. It gives both of you a clear reference point to give new opinions and new ideas on. One of the best ways to do this is to share an insight or a story from something I've been reading. I've found that the more I'm reading and the more I'm learning, the more interesting contributions I have to make to a conversation. I could share something saying, hey, I've just been reading this book, or I've been diving into this podcast, and here's what I've learned. This is one of the reasons why I absolutely love the Blinkist app, because I can dive into a book or a title really, really quickly and have something really interesting that I've learned that I now can't wait to share with others. Recently, I've been reading from Daniel Coyle's The Culture Code, and I have the Blinkist app and the book right next to me at the same time as I dive deeply into the physical hard copy, but I use the app to help me find moments in the book that I might have missed if I didn't know to focus in on them. One of the most amazing studies shared in this book is comparing MBA grads to kindergartners and showing that whenever they were given straws and some tape to build a tall tower, the kindergartners outperformed the grads by 10 to 13 inches every time. Now, I'm not going to tell you why, because I want you to go and read the book. But the reason I'm sharing that is what that does is that it opens up a new conversation. It allows someone to share their opinion. It gives them something to reflect on, something to think about in a way that they might not have before. If you're constantly learning, you're going to find that people are constantly going to listen. The third tip is something that might sound controversial, but I really do mean it. We don't ask people in our life interesting questions, and therefore we don't get interesting answers. If you ask the same boring, everyday questions to everyone in your life, you're simply going to receive the same answers as you did yesterday, last week, and even last year. This is something I learned on my podcast On Purpose. I get to sit down with some of the most fascinating minds in the world, but I've learned that I have to ask the right question in order to receive an answer that's going to help all of you that are listening. At the end of my podcast, I have this final 5 round where they have to answer the questions in either one word to one sentence. And almost every time I'll say, okay, ignore my rule, tell me how you really feel, because the answer is so fascinating. Now, I want to share with you some of the questions that I asked during that time that I think will benefit you when you're really getting into a conversation as well. If you met your younger self today, what would make them happy and what would make them sad? What situations make you feel awkward and why? This one's actually a great icebreaker because they might say this very moment. With some curiosity and humor, what did you recently buy that you now regret? I love that one. Some of my favorite ones that I ask on my podcast are, what's the best advice you've ever received? And what's the worst advice you've ever received? You'll be shocked by some of the answers that people share. And my ultimate favorite, if you could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be? This is a question that has been shared for thousands and thousands of years, but it truly helps you understand someone's values. It's very normal in an environment for the 2 most extroverted people to have a full-on conversation and for everyone else to just watch. The challenge with this is, it's always the same 2 people, maybe 3 if you're lucky. One of the most important ways to switch from small to deep talk is to include more people in the conversation. Take a break from that one-to-one and say, hey, well, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Have you thought about this? Or what's something you've been reading or listening to that could add value to this? As you start to encourage more people in the conversation, you start to see more of each and every person. So while one-on-one conversations are amazing and may make up the bulk of our relationships, when we are in a group setting and scenario, it's really great to pull other people in. Now, this may sound counterintuitive, but one of the best ways to switch from small talk to deep talk or big talk is to start having more deeper conversations with yourself. And if you don't realize this already, we all already talk to ourselves. You may think that that's a foreign concept, but it isn't. You have a voice in your head that tells you when you're hungry, that may have self-doubt, that may have imposter syndrome. It may encourage you and support you, or it may criticize you and complain. We all are always consistently talking to ourselves. So let's make that conversation healthier. This may be the most important one. Try asking yourself some of these questions. It's not about thinking about the best answer or the right answer. Give genuine, honest answers. When you do this, you know what it takes for others to answer in the same vulnerable space. The more you share, the more they learn. The more they share, the more you learn. For example, if I were to answer what I'd talk about in a 1-hour therapy session, I would like to revisit my childhood. I think it's very important that we revisit the patterns, beliefs, and systems we adopted in our childhood because they're affecting us so much in our adulthood. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/JShetty to start your free 7-day trial and get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist.com/JShetty to get a 25% off and a 7-day free trial. I hope you take some time out to practice these insights this week. Take just one thing I've said and try and apply it at the next event, the next social gathering that you attend. I promise you it will change your life in so many ways if you just try and apply one of these principles. Thanks for watching.